Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't been listening, or if you weren't aware, Play Noir is back. An evening of film noir-styled one-act plays written by playwrights like you from around the world. If you're unfamiliar and would like more information or guidelines, you can visit www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. And if you happen to have a film noir-styled one-act play under your belt already, you can submit that directly to info@punkmonkeyproductions.com. And if you want more information and you're not familiar with the genre or the medium to begin with, you can pick up a copy of Play Noir Anthology. 41 film noirs written one-act plays by playwrights around the world just like you. As a matter of fact, we've got 6 out of 7 continents as we're at it right now because we just received a play from Oman, which is considered West Asia. And I know what you're thinking. The only continent we're missing is Antarctica, but you'd be wrong. We actually received a play that was co-written by somebody that was stationed there. So all we're waiting for is from Africa. So if you happen to be living in Africa and you're listening to our show, we expect a play from you. My guest today is a multi-award winning Iranian-American theater director, choreographer, and playwright who is best known in the U.S. and abroad for his modern adaptations of ancient theatrical works. He is the founder of the award-winning Not Man Apart physical theater ensemble, ranked by Backstage in 2014 as one of the 13 most innovative physical theater companies in the world, for which he now serves as emeritus director. Some of his award-winning physical theater adaptations include Pericles Redux, Wish I Had a Sylvia Plath, Titus Redux, As Is, Herculean, and Tempest Redux. His play Lear Redux, A Quantum Fantasia, opens May 24th at the Odyssey Theater in Los Angeles and runs through July 13th. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Farmanesh-Bocca.
You nailed that name.
Finally.
You got that name
Thank
so good.
You. I appreciate it. Forgive me, everybody, including you. My voice is shot. So did a lot of screaming over the weekend. So bear with me. So I might cough and
it was fun
I might struggle.
Right? It was
a blast.
Screaming. Yeah, it was a blast. It was a music concert.
Yeah, well, if you get to see all the classic, the classic bands in the 80s that you have never had the opportunity to see. Yeah. I had never seen New Order. I'd never seen Madness. I never saw Till Tuesday. So it was a great opportunity to see these. Yeah. So we had a couple rough starts here. So now that we're back at it, I wanted to talk about this latest adaptation first, and that is Lear Redux and the I don't want to call it a subtitle, but a Quantum Fantasia. What makes Lear Redux a Quantum Fantasia?
Thank you for asking. Great question. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So this is my 8th Redux play. Redux, meaning usually with the Shakespeare, we do a Redux, which is just a re-examination of that play. We kind of start the same process, and we hope to end in the same process. The end result being, in a way, you could come see the show and know that Shakespearean play better, not less, that for our adaptation, right? There's this kind of, we get into it and turn it over and kind of look at it like a cubist artist. We go around every corner of it and we try to explore what truth Shakespeare has uncovered in this thing, because hundreds of years from now, when we're all gone, they're still going to be doing these plays. So what's incredible about it? What can we understand about it? This particular one led us down the rabbit hole of understanding death, life, what happens to us when we let go of this exquisite boundary that we live in. Right. So for this particular one, it ended up uncovering a kind of fantasia that we went down, because Lear's losing his mind, or maybe has dementia or Alzheimer's, but they didn't have a name for it in Shakespeare's time, but it's those hallmark kind of symptoms are baked in the cake of that play. So we're like, oh wow, so if it's happening and he's losing it and he's having this experience and if we put the audience in the POV of this character, it kind of kept going and going until we had to include spirituality and science. We had to include the cosmos. We had to include what is it about living and then letting go that has to include us looking up at the stars and looking around our environment and dimensions. And so we ended up in this quantum quandary in the middle of examining Lear Redux. So it became Lear Redux, a Quantum Fantasia, because there's not really a tragedy like it's classically billed as, because we kind of go a step further. It's kind of something we ended up not trying to do, but through our examination, I say our because I use my theater company when I adapt.
Sure.
But through my writing kind of led me to a point where I understood it differently. And my main collaborator on this one is a wonderful actor by the name of Jack Stalin. And I went to Juilliard, he went to Juilliard. We met each other in New York many, many years ago, and we reconnected over here in Los Angeles. And this is his third Redux play with me.
Oh, okay.
So I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted to do it with Jack. I couldn't do it without him because I have such a close relationship with my actors, and perhaps a little bit like Terrence McNally, what I try to do is I write for the actor, right? Frankie and Johnny and the Claire de Lune was a lot about his relationship with Kathy Bates, wanting to write her a play because he loved her, right? Well, I love Jack Stalin, and I decided I wanted to do another project with him. He's done Titus for me. He's been Prospero for me. And where I start the process is just talking about the play with Jack. And our conversations get pretty wild and interesting. And, he's on his spiritual path and I'm on my spiritual path. He's kind of into Thich Nhat Hanh and, Buddhist meditation. And I'm kind of into non-dualism and kind of science and where science and spirituality are converging. I mean, I just saw Deepak Chopra on Instagram the other day talking about quantum particles and science. I'm like, what is this spiritual guru talking about science for? Because they're kind of starting to merge a little bit, the kind of understandings, and all of our conversations made it into this play. Conversing with a trusted fellow artist, whether it's Jack or if I have another collaboration with another artist. I adapted with playwright Eduardo Machado and Olympia Dukakis. One of the adaptations we did was an adaptation of Lysistrata. And that, like this, was just born of conversation. I tend to do my adaptations and I work on the plays I write through conversation with friends and fellow artists, and then we end up somewhere and I have to go write about it.
What makes your Redux, if you will, different than a traditional adaptation?
Right. So traditional adaptations are really interesting. Like, obviously we've seen a bunch of them, right? There was a film some years back with Ed Harris where they took Cymbeline, right? And they put him on, made him a motorcycle gang, right? Okay. Or, what was the TV series Sons of Anarchy? Okay, well, that's kind of a combination between Hamlet and King Lear and some other stuff, right? So there's people who adapt and make modern things. Okay. I still believe in the language. Weirdly, as radical as I get with my adaptations, I'm actually a purist, which is would blow people away, to know once you see one of the plays. I really adhere to a lot of the structure and ideas, and I mine it. I don't bend the play to me as much as I try to get inside the play or the ancient writing, because I've done it with ancient classic Greek and Roman as well. I try to get in the play and find out what's emotionally modern about it. What I mean by emotion modernity is not that I need to place it in Afghanistan war in the U.S. to do that, although we did do Titus that way. It's not the setting. It's about what is it about this piece that can produce the most emotional and visceral response from an audience. And it has less to do with where it is placed than taking another look at it in a different way, maybe cutting it apart, maybe taking it down to pieces and putting it back together again. It's almost like finding an old motorcycle, right? Sure. And you want to stay true to the style that it is, whether it's a Triumph or a Norton 750 Commando. You want to stay true to it, but you want to do something a little different that makes heads turn now, so that it draws eyes and emotion and feeling. And that's kind of what I try to do with the play, to be quite honest. Sure, yeah. So there's a modern emotionality in it. The people who are like dealing with being caretakers for their parents right now will really enjoy Lear Redux, because it is King Lear. It's the exact emotional journey that Shakespeare wrote. But I understand it in a new way because I've gotten under the hood of it and I know how to get the audience to where it is and what it was trying to say.
Well, some of those things, as far as like human nature, they don't change. Those themes still apply today as much as they did back then. You know,
Absolutely.
so you know, so because you say you want to stick to the language. So are you still using iambic pentameter? You're using the original language, and then for anything that you decide to unpack and explore and add, are you using prose? Are you writing in iambic pentameter as best way you can?
So good question. This is such a fun question to answer because each Redux is a little different.
Sure.
So once I go down that rabbit hole and I'm having the conversations with friends and trusted artists and getting, exciting my imagination, letting my ideas flower, I gotta say no two Reduxes ended up being alike, even though we're trying to do the same conceptual kind of emotional general thing. It always ends up becoming so different. And yes, sometimes we stick pure Shakespeare, right? Other times, like what we did with Tempest, is I literally did Tempest the way it's written, but I took the fifth act and I kind of took it apart to pieces and put it back together again in a new way that kind of just nobody can see Tempest again without thinking of that production, they tell me, because it was so emotional and it was such a surprise with the ending. We kind of put everything in Prospero's head, and that the daughter he had, the shipwreck he had, it was seen through the lens of a refugee story, and that everything, all the magic was imagined, and that his baby never grew up to be a full-grown girl. It was just a skeleton that he ended up on a shore with. And as dark as that sounds, it was such a beautiful illustration of how people get on boats because the sea is safer than the land and have to go away and do their best to protect their families. So that was through that lens, right? But with this one, I'll tell you exactly what I did with it. I took King Lear's lines, that character's lines. I'd cut it down about 30%, so 70% of his lines, in the order that he speaks them. I lift it out of the play. I put it into a new, fresh document. And then I wrote everything from scratch around it.
Wow.
So what ends up happening is there is a lot of modern conversation in it, except whatever they say is the perfect prompt for what he says next. And so what we're dealing with is I'm using Shakespeare to illustrate what an old world parent might be like, because I had an old world parent. And as parents get older, and if they're Hungarian, Italian, Persian, like whatever nationality they might be, they kind of revert to their mother tongue as they get older. So in our conceit, he is an actor. He's a famous stage actor. Think John Barrymore. Think Alfred Lunt. Sure. Think Frank Langella, or even Gene Hackman. And he's gotten older, and because of his dementia and aphasia, the only thing that stuck was Shakespeare. And so he plays out King Lear with his family, And since they grew up with an actor as a dad, some of them kind of know Shakespearean verse, so they try to work with him. Some are better than others at it, but then most of the time they're just speaking in complete modern vernacular and just saying, God, Dad, what the hell is wrong with you? Except exactly his response in Shakespearean verse, in the exact order that Shakespeare wrote it, the exact emotional journey. That's what we're doing with this one, right? And it's ended up becoming totally fascinating, really freaking weird, right? Because there's some weird moments in King Lear. He goes out into the storm. He loses his mind. He ends up in some like hovel or cave with a man who's protecting his identity and who's lost his mind, and a man who's blinded. And then he has this shamanic kind of experience in this hovel, and he loses his ego. He loses self. And only when he loses self does he get to reunite with Cordelia. We do that, but in our way. Sure. It's an old man, silver alert. He's gone out of the house. He's off of Western somewhere by a mini mall. He ends up in a 7-Eleven with a bunch of kooky guys who are losing their grasp of reality. And so they all kind of like conjoin to do this, like have this shamanic experience. And he does lose self. And he does get to the next level of his journey. So that's how we're doing it in a modern emotional way. It's some of the trappings are things we recognize, right? And we say, oh, I can see myself in that. Oh, wait a minute. That's the problem I have with my mom or my dad when I'm trying to take care of them. And they speak a different language, and I'm broken in that language. And I try my best, but I may not meet up. I can't communicate with them the way I wanted to, you know? Right. And when you go backwards and look at Lear the play, that's exactly what's happening, you know? He wants to hear what he wants to hear. And the kids are trying to give him what he wants. But at some point they break and they don't want to deal with him anymore, you know? And so anybody who's lost a parent, anybody who's been a caregiver, anybody who is a parent, I realized the tragedy in King Lear is not that he dies at the end. It's not that he made some poor decisions. We all make poor decisions. The true tragedy of King Lear is that parents will never truly know their kids, and the kids will never truly know their parents, no matter how much they say they do. You know your friends better than you'll know your parents. Yeah. How were they when they were 16 and falling in love and making their mistakes? You know? So so that's the way we bring modern emotionality to something that's an ancient text. And the two questions I often get is like, well, why wouldn't you just do the original play and let people make that connection themselves? Well, it's not quite the same magical tour through the play. I think people go to Shakespeare oftentimes because they think it's good for them. Instead of realizing, oh no, there's a lot. Yeah. It is offering me a lot. And the other thing I get is, well, then why use any of the Shakespeare at all? Why don't you just do a modern version and like Sons of Anarchy or something like that and just forget all the Shakespeare altogether? Sure. But I argue there's a place for that poetry. There's a place where, just like in a musical, right, where the reason they sing is because words aren't enough anymore. With Shakespeare, I feel like words are not enough. It's not this is life. It's life is like. And so they go into this huge poetic heightened state, because that's actually what's happening at Starbucks, right? We're watching people stand in line, and that's pretty boring. That's real life. What life is like is what's going on inside them while they're waiting in line at Starbucks, right? Sure. So Shakespeare is such fertile ground for me to do it. And like I said, since this is my 8th one I'm doing this way, I'm kind of finding my way into it. And we've billed it as being kind of David Lynchian, to be honest. That's just permission. That's just permission, because God bless David Lynch. I mean, like, he gave us permission to have ideas and not feel obligated to answer every little question about it. Right. But just say, go on the ride, man. Did you feel something? Great. You know, so that's what we're trying to do with this one, I think. So did you start off your playwriting career doing just adaptations and reduxes, or did you start off in a traditional sense and then say, I've got these ideas? No, you know, it's so funny. I mean, I would say if you asked me 5 years ago, I'd say I wasn't a writer. I mean, because I respected it so much, and I was so, it's funny, you can do things you're not overly precious about. Sure. Everybody can do things they're not precious about. But the more precious you make something, the harder it is to do it. There's people who, you know, my colleagues from Juilliard or NYU, they do films all the time. I think I waited to do film as long as I did because I was so precious about it. Right. And theater didn't intimidate me. I'd been doing it since I was a kid, so I didn't think it was that precious. You just do it, right? So I did the most radical things I could think of, you know? So yeah, I started out adapting. Never did I think I could write my own stuff. But right now, you know, I've written a television series with my wife. That seems to be moving forward. I wrote a screenplay. Ed Harris actually signed on to be part of it. Now we're kind of maybe filling in the cast with some other stuff. But I mean, we'll see if it ever gets made. Again, you know, attaching people is one thing, and then getting it made is another. But yeah, I think I'm trusting myself more as a writer now, and I think it came from adapting, and I never let it count. And I know that's a sticking point with writers, right? I mean, like somebody was upset, or not somebody. I think there was this whole furor about Barbie, right? Where they said, why is it adapted or original? What's the difference between original and adapted? And somehow that adaptation was somehow a step under original writing. And then there was a whole group of people that came and said, how dare you? Adaptation is like a real serious art in writing. You have so much more to deal with in a lot of ways. So I was still wrestling that. Do you believe that? Oh, I think all writing, whether adaptation or original, comes from a super vulnerable place And whether you have some breadcrumbs to follow in an adaptation, in some ways it is harder, right? It's like saying, well, what's harder, playing an original character or having to do the Bob Dylan biopic? Right. And you go, well, that's a good point, right? So you got Bob Dylan to use as a model, but did that make it any less of a challenge for Timothy Chalamet to put that on? No, now you've got everybody's eyes on you and a preconceived opinion of how it should be. So in some ways, adaptation is wildly more difficult than original writing, because you're living up to people's perceived understanding of it, right? So there will be people who will definitely want to walk out of one of my reduxes, but because they have a fixed notion of how something should be, and as soon as it's not that, they throw their nose in the air and they say, forget it, you know.
How much do you come to the table with before you start collaborating? Or do you just automatically go to your theater company group and say, this is what we're doing, and start throwing things at me, and then you take those notes and you go home and you write? Or do you have a certain amount done before you bring them to the table?
Yeah, really great questions. Both different times, different projects. I'm a real big believer in throw your hat over the fence and then you have to go get it. So sometimes it starts that way. It's like, I got an idea. Let's do this. Oh my God, now I've got to do it. I told people, you know. And then other times it's the other way around. You know, I have a real specific vision. I want to do it. It's got to get clarified, you know, and all that. So then I start bringing in conversations, collaborators. But I just find it really helpful to have conversations, not even about, I didn't necessarily have even conversations about King Lear, right? I didn't go to other writer friends. I went to actors, and I went to friends who were interested in the subject matter, spirituality, losing a parent, grief. Like, I talked to those people, and I not in a research way, because I know there's that too. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a book about grief, so I went and talked to all these doctors. No, just to have wonderful off-the-cuff conversations with people. It does excite the imagination. I don't know how to write without talking first. Isn't that weird? I know some people are the other way around, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what other writers do. But I find it really helpful to talk. And then, some people will go, and I don't mean elevator pitch, right? I don't mean like talk about the thing you're gonna do. I want to talk about the heart of what I'm going for. And then the play or the script or the screenplay will like fall in around that, you know? So I think.
So then are you guys just unpacking ideas and the themes of the play, and you're just taking notes, and then like, okay, we'll reconverge in a week or so, and then like, this is what I've got.
Yeah.
What else can we draw out of this? Or
this time was with just Jack. I mean, like, it was just Jack and I, because we both had lost both our parents.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, we all go there. That's what happens. We both had lost our moms, both had lost our dads. We were, we didn't do a ton of art because COVID happened. And then, I've been writing for trying to do film and TV stuff. So I hadn't been doing plays in a minute, And then we had lunch, and then, we just started talking. And, so yes, it was similar to that with Jack this time, which is just like, okay, we had all these conversations. I'm like, I got to put some of this down on paper. And then I'd start sending him stuff, and, they take different amounts of time. Like Tempest took me 6 weeks to really figure out. I really kind of hated that play, and then I had to figure it out, and I did, and then now I love that play. With King Lear, we talked and talked and talked. I sat down, I wrote the whole thing in 2 weeks. It just came fast.
Wow.
Yeah. And we go down some rabbit holes in this play. I mean, like, I think people will be blown away to know that all of King Lear's lines are intact and in the order he speaks them in the play, because it seems so natural to the new world we've put it in that it's hard to believe that that's the actual order in the play. Even I go, wow, I can't believe that's the actual order.
So tell me about Tell me about what it looks like on the page when you're, because it sounds like you're going down a non-traditional path with it, which is great, awesome. But like earlier you said, he winds up on, would you say Western?
And then he winds up at a mini mall at Western, like at a 7-Eleven.
Yeah. So, but what does that look like on the page, and then what does that look like on what does that look like on the stage?
Right.
Having different locations and what's the difference?
Well, I got to answer in two halves. As far as what it looks like on the page, this is really interesting. Like back in the day when I started play adapting and stuff like that, I'd usually write something that seemed more like code than a readable piece of material. I'd give everybody the parts, we'd do it, and then for posterity's sake, after I was done, I'd rewrite it with some more stage direction in it, just like a typical play. Stage managers added stage direction and all that when something's done. In the last 5 years, since I've gotten more and more into screenwriting, actually, it's been a little bit longer than that. But as I've gotten more into screenwriting, I'm kind of the Quentin Tarantino school of I'll write it so well and so full of description and interest, and that I could bind it, put it on a bookshelf, and I could stop there. I could stop there, and if you want to read it, it'll feel like the same experience of reading like a really fun short book, where it's like all there. I saw the entire movie, I felt the entire movie, I had the full experience, Right. And really, I've really gotten into descriptive action writing. I really love it now. So yeah, it used to look like code that then the actors would do, and then I'd clean it up so somebody could read what it was. But now, when I wrote this one, and I wrote it in 2 weeks, everybody I gave it to saw the whole play, every moment of it, through the detail, gestures, everything, what they were feeling, how they were moving, even some of the choreography was all written in there.
How much of that is directing on the page?
A lot of it, because that's actually where I started. I started as a dancer and an actor, but then choreography and direction came shortly thereafter. You get better and better at directing. You get more. You get better at saying a lot with fewer words, perhaps.
Sure.
Not in this interview, but when I'm directing anyway. A lot more with fewer words. And then that does translate to how you write.
Well, let me ask you this, because forgive me if it's in there and I just totally forgot. Are you directing this as well?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the difference. And that's where I was going to go, how does that come into play? Like when you get into that much detail, and you get into that much stage direction, you get into that much action, but somebody else is directing. Or is that ever the case with your work?
It rarely happens. I end up doing it. I've had a few people direct some of the things I've done, but mostly.
Is that when it was code and a little?
No.
Oh,
when it's that, I'm full description. I give them everything I've got.
Okay, but how does that? I mean, do you run into conflict where it's just like, dude, there's nothing here for me to do my job?
No, not in that order.
Okay, just curious.
I think what's interesting is you learn quick when other people do your work. If you didn't write it, they're not going to do it. I mean, that sounds like such an obvious statement.
Well, no, of course, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage.
If it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. But I mean, I double learned that one. Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, I wrote this short film that ended up winning a bunch of awards, and somebody else directed it. I just wrote it, and it did really well. I mean, for short films are hard, and getting into a festival is hard. We got into 35 festivals. We won 14 best short film awards. I mean, like, it was nuts. And I remember writing this part where the lead female character is just walking through this supermarket, and I realized I didn't tell them why she was walking through the supermarket. So they filmed her just walking through a supermarket. And I go, oh no, I blew it. This means so much more. This has to be surreal. This moment that she's walking through, all the other women in there need to be completely distraught. They need to be just a million miles away, because it was about a GI wife. And the other wives in the the military base supermarket are supposed to be kind of like all their life is gone, like out of them, right? It's supposed to be this surreal moment. And I realized I didn't really unpack that, even though the rest of the screenplay was so surreal. I thought they'd also do a surreal supermarket, but in the one scene, I didn't write the surreality in. Sure, they were just going to film it straight. And that was a big presumption, right? Like, don't you know the tone of this thing? Right. Like, this is not a short film. I mean, it was 24 minutes. So, I mean, like, every page has all these surreal things. And the director actually did a marvelous job. But I didn't put it on that one page, so it didn't happen. And boy, was that a lesson of, if it's not there, you can't presume they've picked up on their cues and are going to do that, right?
And when I've worked with young playwrights that are just kind of starting out, and they've written some pieces, and I'm reading through them, or just like or we've watched them, and we're talking about like what I don't understand what the character because she did because of this. I'm like, you didn't establish that, but that's it fits in your mind. That's different. Yeah. If you don't interpret that onto the page to where it makes it so. And
here's the thing, and I have all sorts of sympathy about this. I don't think that look, it helps to be an actor and a dancer. I'm not joking. It's helped my writing. Sure. I don't know how it's supposed to go. I've only taken a few writing courses, so I always feel like a charlatan when I talk about writing. Again, because I respect it so much, right? But honestly, like, I don't know where I'd be without my movement background or my acting background, because it's from there that I understand that I need to know more, right? Sure. That each character that I write, I kind of look at it like this. If somebody was going to play you, James, in a film, right? Somebody's going to play you, okay? So let's say Paul Reiser was going to play you in a film, right? Let's say a young Paul Reiser. He's a marvelous actor, and I love him. What are the things you'd want him to know about you if he was going to play you, if he was going to represent you on screen? What are the essential things he'd need to know about you? Well, that's how I feel about every character. In fact, even the Shakespearean characters when I write a play. Like, what do they want us to know about them if we're going to take on playing them? I mean, it becomes a really intimate and personal experience, but that comes from years of breaking down scripts and really trying to understand what the playwright or the screenwriter or what Shakespeare or Aristophanes wanted me to know about this guy, right? And yeah, it does help that I went to NYU and Juilliard, and they practically traumatized me into finding this stuff, because you got to find that stuff out. You can't just go in blind, And look, the Ian McKellens and Christian Bales of this world who are very proud to say that, and I didn't go to acting school. Yes, you did. Because it's either on the job training, or if you're not getting the jobs, you got to go to a place where you can get the training. You're all training. Right. Doing is training. And because both those guys I just mentioned also, like the people I went to school with, are going to be curious and rabid about finding the most they can out about a character. That ethic as a writer, oh my God, it's key. And I don't know if I would have learned it as a writer without a lot of bloody noses if I also didn't have an acting and dance background that really forced me to get super specific. And then I go, okay, now I got to bring that to my writing because, well, why wouldn't I? Because I've been on the other side of it, trying to learn those lines and understand what's the background, what's happening. And then you don't, it's not like you just lay out their background, right? You don't just, like, I didn't write the play and said, and this character, this happened to them when they were 6. Of course not. Also, that's not playable, Right. But what is playable is me understanding that, and then writing in the tics, writing in the things that, trigger them, writing in the things that either relieve them or inflame them based on that I know. And then, then the actor may be curious. And it's like, oh, why does this pinch her so much? I do have an answer as a director or as a writer for them. But even if I didn't have an answer for them, there's enough there for them to fill in the blanks to then execute that moment. And it's happening. All the stuff that I intended is happening. But you just can't tell them on the nose what it is, right?
Right. So on that note then, do you sit there and do a character breakdown of everybody before you even sit down to make this adaptation, or are you just kind of unpacking as you go and discovering all these little things like, oh, well, yeah, I got to write that down. That's good. What's that process like as far as...
It's a combination, but boy, your questions are just so good. You know what it is for me? I start with archetype. It's also just because of my classicist training, and because since I do deal in classics, even when I deal in something that's not a classic, like I wrote something very contemporary, has no background in any sort of adaptation whatsoever.
Right.
Archetype is so strong in ancient works, and it's taking place right now. Like like I could watch Severance and I could tell you everybody's archetype, bop, 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 bop. That's what they're in. And then they prove it throughout the whole series. And I go, there you go. Yeah, of course that's what they would do. And that we are either a combination of or strictly one archetype that we live in, right? People are a lot of things. Of course they are. I don't mean to like diminish, individual free will and all the rest of it, right? And your very specific special background. But we operate from these very archetypical places, and whether some people get that from Joe Campbell, or whether some people get that from Shakespeare, or whether you go into man, there's so many kinds of archetypes out there. You go into Hindu tradition and find a million archetypes, right? Or mythology, but archetypes are really helpful. I don't even have to question what they are. And when I start with that spine, as each character is an archetype, the backgrounds kind of unfold on their own, as opposed to me going and writing a little short story about every character. I already know who they are, because when they live so squarely inside an archetype, it's really super helpful, but it's also helpful to an audience. It's like I'm looking at all the books behind you right now. There's not one published material behind you where the characters aren't living in archetypes. Firmly, not even kind of quasi, not even most of them that I'm staring at right now, everything from Dickens to Homer to all of it. I'm Edgar Allan Poe even. Look, they are square, singular archetypes, and they get into our unconscious, and we go, I know that guy. I know that woman. I know that person. That's my dad. That's my mom. That's my lover. That's my friend. That's me. And it starts to it kind of flowers from there. I like to call it flowering, as opposed to I'm scribbling down the characters and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess that's what I do.
So do you hit all of them? Do you use every archetype that there is, or just the ones that jump out at you?
I'm still finding archetypes. Are you kidding me? I'm still finding them. I'm still finding I'm going to be silly for a minute, but not so silly. Gilligan's Island, they're all archetypes. Commedia dell'arte, archetypes, right? Capitano, that's the skipper, right? Big burly guy who's he seems like the tough guy, but he's the first one to run away when something happens, right? I mean, these are archetypes. Immediately I'm going to tell you how the character is going to behave through understanding that. So I go, okay, so it might be based on Commedia, but why not just Gilligan's Island on its own? I can find Gilligan, I can find the skipper, I can find Ginger, I can find Marianne. I know those archetypes, right? I'm probably dating myself right now. People are like, who the hell is Gilligan?
I date myself every night.
Every day, right? But it doesn't have to be so classical. It doesn't have to be so formal. It doesn't have to be so rigid. It could be anything, right? The Friends, right? Chandler and all them, and all those characters are archetypes. Now, whether you want to source the original archetype or say, oh yeah, no, I'm working off the Friends archetype.
Got it.
Seinfeld archetype. Oh, perfect. Those guys are all archetypes. It doesn't have to be so snooty, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Or rather, what's the right word I want to use? Strict?
Formalized, strict.
There you go.
Yeah. Because formal archetypes, hero's journey stuff, right?
Sure.
The wizard. Okay,
right.
Who knows a wizard in their life? Well, I actually do, and some people might, but,
sure.
yeah, I think archetype is a friendly place to start, and that you have to expand your idea of what archetype is. You don't have to read a book on it. Just like, who do you like? What do you watch? What do you read? Oh, you like that. Well, does that fall into an archetype? What is an archetype? Somebody who operates like from a particular space, whether it is fear or love or want, need. Well, all characters have want and need, but it's like, yeah, like, where are they coming from? Are they the adorable idiot? You know, or are they the bully? Like, who are they? Are they Popeye? Are they Bluto? Like, who are they? And then just go there and just don't make it so hard on yourself. You know, I find actors really make it hard on themselves. Fellow writers I talk to make it really hard on themselves.
Right.
But I guess I've made it less precious over time, and it's really served me.
Do or can all archetypes have an arc? Or are there ones that just don't? They're just there to serve a purpose. And
that's when you're getting into some really interesting creativity. So archetypes, here's the best part about archetypes. They don't have a fated end.
Right.
They actually don't, right? Gilligan will or will not get rescued. Gilligan will or will not mess everything up. Here's the fun part. If Gilligan becomes a world-famous quantum physicist, well, there's a surprise.
Sure,
so now
sure.
take him there, you know, and like, how does that happen, right? So what's great is the archetypes are not committed to an arc. It just means that they are in such a very specific type that their actions and reactions are kind of become second nature to the reader, the writer, the audience. And then how about one archetype becomes a different archetype, right?
Right.
Where does that happen? Oh my gosh, every film. Like, how about There Will Be Blood? He comes from one archetype, he ends up as another archetype, right? Malcolm X, Spike Lee's film, really takes Malcolm from one archetype to a different kind of archetype. And then there's a journey there, right? If we take King Lear, who was he at the beginning of the play? Well, he is a blustery, my way or the highway, just powerful, just demon to his family, right? But by the end, he's lost everything. He is nothing. He has nothing. He's humble. He's loving. That's all he's got left. That's where he ends. So what are those two archetypes, you know? Like, that's Pantalone at the end, where he's just kind of like a weak, feeble, loving, right, precious person. So what happens in between? Oh my God, to transform this person. So really great writing has transformation in it, right? And I still use archetype. Even if they're so fixed, firm, something can break them. Now that gets to be the creative fun part. What breaks them? You know.
So since we're on Lear again, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. So you've taken, or was it Lear that you took 70%?
Yeah.
Out of and then put them over here? Okay.
For this particular remix, right, that's what we did, yeah.
So let's say then, where are the other characters still from Lear? And you're using their names but differently? Or, yes, we got Lear, but all of his family is Lisa and Amy.
We could have gone that way, but we
Benji.
kept with the names. You
Okay.
know, the eldest is Goneril, the middle is Regan, and the youngest is Cordelia. We kept the names. We kept some of the names. And even though we have this conceit that he's an actor stuck in this world, right? We express some of the characters in King Lear through archetype, right? There's
right.
Edgar
Sure.
and Edmund. They're the bastard brothers of each other,
Right.
right? Well, and Edmund is evil, and Edgar is nice, and Edmund tricks Edgar and messes him up because Edmund wants... even though Edmund is a bastard, he wants the fortune of his father, Gloucester. Okay, how do you turn that into what we're doing? Well, the day nurse is a really loving guy named Edgar, and the night nurse that he has is a really kind of demonic, maybe elder abuse guy who is called Edmund, right? And maybe they have a rivalry. They're these really interesting side characters in King Lear, but they're in this play.
Okay.
And see what's funny is this: you don't need to know King Lear to come see this play. you're going to see something wild and interesting, and the Shakespeare's going to make some sense, and you can have some cursory understanding of King Lear, like, oh yeah, he was the king who gave his kingdom away to 3 daughters, and then he was humbled because he really screwed up. Okay, that in one sentence, really base understanding. You'll have a great time. Or if you really know the play, or if you go to Amazon and watch, I don't know, Hopkins do the 3.5-hour version of King Lear, which is a slog, man, but it's one of the best actors in the world doing it. You could come to this and see all the relationships play out, and all the moments. I mean, here's what I'm obligated to do as an adapter, right? There's a scene. What happens in the scene? Once I understand what happens in the scene, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, my job is to present that emotional, spiritual psychology any way I choose to. Any way I choose to, right? And as long as I nail the emotional, spiritual, psychological event, literally, it's all on the table, guys, as far as I'm concerned, as a fellow artist. If any artists are watching this, like, as long as you get that core as an adaptation writer, you can do whatever you want. It is completely up to you how you want to make that dish, right? And that's what we're doing. We made a dish. We're serving up King Lear Redux, right? We're serving that. You may or may not like it, and that's okay, but it will not be boring. And I dare you to go watch the 3.5-hour Lear anywhere else, where by the end you just want to pluck your own eyes out and go, will this guy die already? But we go on a pretty magical adventure. I feel like for the Reduxes as well, I think, and by the way, generally speaking, I'm also a big believer in whimsy.
Okay.
That sounds like such a light word, but that can mean humor. Right? Like Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn's great at writing like a serious emotional moment, but he puts in a few jokes and you like really enjoy it, right? That's whimsy to me. That's where that goes back to life is like, because in the midst of the most tremendous tragedies, the most difficult family matters, your brother's going to fart and you're going to laugh. I mean, it gets ridiculous. Sublime to ridiculous and ridiculous to sublime is something I just... personally, as an artist, I really appreciate to observe, to write, to participate in, because that's how life works. It's never one thing,
Say that again. Sublime to
ridiculous and ridiculous to sublime. Yeah.
Can you expand on that? What is it like?
Okay.
Or just another way of saying your use of whimsy? Is that?
Yeah, that's another way to say it. But I mean, it's like what's ridiculous to sublime, and the other way around is like, I don't know, if you ever got high with your friends and you're just laughing and you think life is ridiculous and you all fall on your back and then you see the stars. It's just gone from ridiculous to sublime, and you all go quiet for a minute because you realize how profound it is what you're watching. And then somebody cracks a joke and you all just burst in laughter and become silly again. Back to ridiculous. Because life is ridiculous and it's sublime, and I don't know how to write anything as pure drama or pure comedy or pure, because nothing works that way in life. Right. Nothing. With all the tears of a parent passing, we also had a great many laughs. Sure. And I think that's my trick too. It's not because I feel obligated to tell a joke just because it's been serious a minute on the screen or on the page. I think I do it because there's no way life works like that. It's never one thing.
Well, how does that, how do you know when to do it?
Huh? I think that's where it comes down to instinct. And I really do. And I hate to say it because I like to think that most things can be practiced and taught. But that does come down to instinct and taste. That's your taste, man. Mm-hmm. I think everybody's got a certain amount of taste. And you watch enough material, right? Put it this way. Let's say you're a curtain puller, right? This is an actual job, by the way, in the theaters in London. A curtain puller.
Yep, sure,
There's one guy dedicated. He's a union guy. He lifts the curtain at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he drops the curtain. He is a union paid guy that's what he does. Nobody else touches that curtain, and he sees every performance of every play that comes in there. That means, so Othello goes in there and he sees 100, maybe 150 performances of Othello. And then Macbeth gets in there. And then Hamlet goes in there and he sees every performance of every play, the best actors in the world performing every play. And you got to question and say, that guy who's seen that many performances and that many great actors played so many roles and probably has memorized every line of every play that he's had to pull the curtain for, would that guy know something, some little something about Shakespeare? Well, I would say, yeah, he would. That guy might even be a Shakespeare scholar just for pulling that curtain. Wow. I would argue you and me and everybody listening to this has watched more TV, watched more film, and watched more and read more books than that curtain puller had ever seen numbers of performances. So why aren't you an expert? Why don't you know your own taste? Why don't you know what you like? And to develop an instinct for something, I think, develop a craft for something, I think 90% of it is noticing. Right? I used to tell I used to teach at NYU, and I would tell my students all the time, whenever you learn something, learn it like you're going to have to teach it. Then you'll learn it differently, right? And I think that was just a trick to get them to notice what they were learning, right? And I think when you watch things and you enjoy things, I mean, sure, there's a great number of the population that has no interest in the arts or writing or these kinds of crafts. They just want to enjoy the music. They want to enjoy the movie, go home, have some Chinese food and go to bed. I get it. And that's wonderful because, but I think the guys like us who are really interested in this stuff, I think it's just a question of noticing. Right. What did I like about Hemingway's work? What did I like about Raymond Carver's work? What do I like about, Homer? And then you start bringing that into your work because why not? Homer had his mentors and Shakespeare had his, you're gonna use your influences, right? Mm-hmm. Shakespeare had his, right? So if Shakespeare's yours, no slouch, it's fine. There's nobody who's a writer that you've ever read that didn't have somebody they looked to and said, I want to be more like that. And that's where you develop like, oh, I feel like a joke here because I've watched Guardians of the Galaxy 300 times and I know it doesn't get that far without one. Or what would be interesting? You know what I mean? So I feel like it's part instinct and it's part just noticing what you already know about yourself and what you like, I think.
Going back to when you were talking about like picking in the scenes and reading the scenes, and does that come into play when you're doing an adaptation? When you say, I have to understand this scene now, does that also affect which characters you're going to use? So hypothetically, and I don't know how many characters there are in the total, because again, there's sometimes some of those plays have 40 different characters.
Yeah, 30, 40 characters.
Yeah, and
I do it all with 7, but
just characters.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
But what I do is, since I have those archetypes, I go through the play, and one archetype can hold about 3 of those characters.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because they're like, oh, you're in that, or in my case, like there's a great character of the fool in Lear. I actually split that character between 2 characters, 2 different archetypes, and take another one and split it, right? So most of the time when I say I'm doing Lear with 7 people, they go, oh, so people are playing multiple roles. I'm like, no, they're all just playing one role. But there's multiple roles inside that one role, if that makes any sense, right? Yeah. And so that's what we did for this one. I think the danger I always face with some of the actors I reuse for my Reduxes is I think that it's going to be like the other one. And I go, no, it's not. It's completely different. We're going to start the same way, and we're going to have something really interesting at the end, but that's where the similarities end. I really try to find each one of the Reduxes. I go, okay, here's a play I'm either daunted by or interested in, and I found it under a rock. There's no guy named Shakespeare. I found this play, and it's in poetic form. What is it saying? And I really try to erase my mind, because there is about 1 million people out there right now who have never read Hamlet, but will tell you who he is.
Okay.
Right? And because he's in our collective unconscious, and that there's something good about that, and there's something terrible about that, because everybody thinks he's going to ride on a motorcycle with a black leather jacket or something. He's a nerd. He's an absolute mess. This guy was the first anti-hero. He was terrible at everything. Like, he is a real fly in the ointment, you know? And then that's the other thing I do. I take a look at all the villains, and I turn them on their ear and I go, what if this is, and Disney has done this in recent years, is like, what if they're the hero? Let me relook at the play if they're the hero. Not because I'm doing something tricky, not because that's what I'm going to do in the play, but I won't understand all the characters unless I take every character and make them the lead. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the joke as an actor, is like, who's the lead of Hamlet? Well, who am I playing? The gravedigger. Well, it's about a gravedigger.
Well, wasn't it Caine, Michael Caine, who said that? Michael was like, Caine, he was talking about like, oh God, what play was it? Was it a Dollhouse? Maybe it was a Dollhouse, but it was some play. It's like, what's the character? What's it about? Oh, it's about this guy who, and he makes it about
the male character,
right, whatever character you're playing.
That's what the play shouldn't be about that character.
Well, it's about whatever character you're playing. That's what the play's about.
Exactly.
And I've tried to find that story.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's an audition,
but it's a total archetypical story too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's true about anything, right? Who are you playing? Well, the play's about that, And one might think, well, isn't that low brain, or that's egotistical? No, because as an actor, you have to make your world about the person you're playing. To radically inhabit your character is what great actors do. Not just radically inhabit. So when you get accustomed to that, I recommend every writer go take an acting class.
Sure. Yeah.
Not even because they want to be an actor, but and it's terrifying. I know friends who are like, oh God, I could never do it. I'm like, I don't know what's scarier, taking the acting class where nobody's going to see anything except the people in there, or putting your work out for the world to see and judge. I think that's way more scary personally. So take the acting class, see what it's like to be on the inside, and pick one of these fabulous, amazing playwrights. John Patrick Shanley, or David Rabe, one of these amazing modern playwrights who are at the top of their craft. And read and say, how am I going to play this character? And then realize what a disadvantage you put your actors, your director in if you don't give them at least as much richness. It sets a bar for you that I think is a good one to set.
Sure, I would even include improv, and I'm not talking short form improv. Forget short form improv. Like, I don't even know if you can call it. No, I'm talking strict long form.
Oh, okay,
long form improv where you get the whole story, you get the When I went through the training center at IO West, that helped my writing immensely. It was like, okay, now I get get rid of all that extra stuff that you don't need. Right. It's about the connections, that relationship between those characters that you're playing. So I feel like it's very helpful.
Do you know the John Ruskin group over at the Santa Monica Airport? They're an acting company based off of Sanford Meisner's work, but they do this really cool thing. Shout out to them, by the way. They do these things called the cafe plays, where actors and playwrights come together and they write 24 hours. One day, they write a play and they perform it that night.
Wow.
And what's great about that is not only the excitement, the visceral, like, oh my God, we just learned this morning. I'm going to do this now in front of an audience. That's kind of exciting and fun. But besides the card trick novelty of having to do it the same day or the next day or something like that, it gets you in a place as an actor where you make the strongest decision and go, as opposed to like deliberate. But that's what the writer gets to do too. They just get to take the boldest decision and just run with it and kind of let the chips fall where they may. Is it going to be perfect? No. Will they have some great stuff peppered in there? Yes. And quickly, and go, oh, maybe I don't need to be so precious about this. Maybe I really can, in a first draft, like, just knock it out,
I did want one other question, because you went into yes, you will take different archetypes and put them into a character, but do you take, when you're doing these adaptations, will you take multiple characters and combine them to where it's like, look, I'm narrowing down this to 7, but there's 3 characters that help move this storyline, so I can kind of bring them into this particular character and to make that through line or
Exactly. I mean, like what you said. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think writers, directors, filmmakers, we're collage artists, and I think we need to remember that. We're kind of taking all the magazine clippings and putting together our own vision. Did we take the picture of in the magazine? No, we didn't. We're using it though, right? We're going to use it to tell our own story. And that's often what I say about this when people are saying, I'm like, okay, you're going to see Lear Redux and you're going to get the story of King Lear and you're really going to understand it. But I need you to understand, we're not trying to do King Lear.
Right.
We're using King Lear to tell our story. But by using that story, you're going to get that as well as something else.
Right.
And you know, it's hard when I say things like modern emotionality, and people are going to be like, what the hell does that even mean? So you're using modern language? No, not always. Then what does that mean? Well, you come and see it.
That's
and
what I was just gonna
say. You'll understand because you'll see it and go, oh, it's relevant to me emotionally, but not because it's modern. It's just been constructed in a way to make it relevant for me right now and not make it feel like it's a museum piece. And now I understand this poetry in a new way, in a richer way, and like actually a really more emotional way. And so that I want you to go see King Lear after seeing Lear Redux.
Sure.
You're going to know it better. You're going to be looking for those moments and you're going to feel it in a deeper way because you know, oh, that's the moment where he's really saying this to his daughter and she's not understanding it. Because you see it in this more friendly way that can allow you to understand how it's relevant to you, you know? And so collage artist, I think is the way to put what you asked about. It's like, yeah, of course. I'm going to definitely take the dress off of this one and the helmet off of this one, and I'm going to put it on here, and I'm going to do this thing. You know, there's a wonderful designer who sadly committed suicide. His name was Alexander McQueen. And what was amazing about McQueen was this. He would sometimes be gifted fabric from like Renaissance era or the Tudor era, like ancient fabrics that have somehow kind of, and they're like tapestry, they're beautiful. Then he would take them and he would cut the most modern dress he could out of it. And it was just mind-boggling. I mean, his clothes on people are amazing, but they could just be on mannequins, and they've toured the world just to walk through it and go, it's the cut, right? And I can say that about my adaptations, but I can even say that about people's original work. It's sure, take ancient archetypes, take modern silly things from a sitcom you saw, but it's the way you cut it together that makes it the structure, that makes it the cool thing it is, right? So he keeps a lot of tradition, but then he breaks all the rules. And that's like the best way to describe the Redux thing for me and what I've been doing for like now 30 years off and on with different ancient adaptations is honestly, I try to keep the tradition, but I'm going to break every rule I can on the way. And that's kind of an exciting space to work in.
I would imagine. You dropped a bit of info a little while ago that you have taken a few writing classes.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yes, I eventually did. Yes.
What did you learn? What was like, oh wow, I got to start doing that. You know, I don't know. I mean, were there certain things that you realized, like, you know?
It wasn't in quite an academic setting, to be completely honest with you. But, you know, I studied classics, obviously, but they don't teach you how to write them when you study classics. But I'm learning structure along the way. I'm learning all those things that I said that people should pay attention, that they're noticing. I've done hundreds of plays. I've done everything but maybe 3 of Shakespeare's plays, like been in them.
Sure.
Like I've nearly done the entire canon. I'm fortunate that way. You know, I gave my life to this.
Sure.
You suffer sometimes to do that, but I gave my life to it. My reward is I know all this stuff that's really interesting to me anyway. the writing classes I took were very privileged. I'm going to plug another theater company in LA. So, by the way, the Odyssey Theater is where we're doing Lear Redux. We're doing it with New American Theater, which is Jack Stalin's company, my dear friend who basically I do plays with just to hang out with and talk with. And Not Man Apart Physical Theater Ensemble is my group. So these three companies come together. They came together to do the last Redux I did. So they're coming together to support this one. I mentioned John Ruskin Group Theater at the Santa Monica Airport that does the cafe plays. They're great. They're wonderful. Check them out. And one more I'm going to plug right now because this is where my writing came from. There's a wonderful company in Los Angeles called Word Theater, W-O-R-D, Word Theater. And what they do is they're not doing plays very much. What they do is they take great pieces of writing by pushcart award winners, or living playwrights, some dead playwrights, but a lot of living, not playwrights, novelists. And then they get actors to read the novels, right? And it becomes a really exciting turn where you get to hear a lot of these really awesome writers' work come to life through the actor's voice, right? And they do it at schools, and they do it over the pond in London, and they do it here in Los Angeles. Wonderful group. Check them out, Word Theater. Well, they have a writing retreat, and it's a lot of fun. It's in Europe. I mean, you go.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, it was in Edale for a while, and then it's in the south of France. This other one, and you basically just have an excuse to go there and just be away from your regular normal stuff.
Sure.
And it is part vacation and fabulous food and wine. Yes. But what they do is they bring in amazing writers, amazing novelists. And what I did is I got to sit with real writers who aren't even playwrights, but they understand writing, and they do have writing students, but they do something different there. They hang out with you. They give you some prompts. They get you to write a little bit, and then you get to read them out loud. And then that writer, who's an award-winning writer, like sometimes best-selling authors, and they get to tell you what they heard from what you did, and they're so supportive and so lovely. And then you kind of wake up to the fact that, like, it's like, who was it? James Cameron, right? He said, you want to be a director? Just go direct something.
Yeah. Yep.
Just go direct something. You want to be a writer? Just start writing. It is that simple, and of course that hard, as we understand. Right. But being there and being with a bunch of writers and realizing I do have something to say, and I do understand structure, because I would chime in all the time. Is, well, you know what would happen in ancient works? And I would say, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm the classicist and I'm saying this stuff. And I think we discredit how much we understand about life, how much we understand about entertainment and what we like and don't like, until we're put in a situation I'll go back to the top of what I said, you talk about it with people. So not only was the writing great at this writing retreat, it was the conversations that then made you feel like, well, I'm allowed to have this wild idea, and I'm allowed to put it down. And in fact, I don't think anybody else is going to put this wild idea together just the way I will, because nobody's me. Oh my God, I have to do it, right? They talk about that in filmmaking all the time. Of course you have to make that film because nobody else is, right? You have to write that play. You have to write that screenplay. You have to be a writer, because nobody's going to put those words together quite like you, right? And so that's what I learned there. So it wasn't in a traditional sense like, oh, I've got to do this. I mean, sure, there's always best practices. There's always cool things. And you can go on Instagram University, right? Or YouTube University and hear a lot of people give you pointers on that stuff. I'm sure people who listen to this show get pointers all the time, and they're all fabulous. Yeah, and you're doing a service for that. But at the end of the day, it's the conversations, I think, for me, that really give me permission, help me reflect on what I do and don't know, what I do and don't like, and then permission just to then do it, go out and do it.
Well, I think that goes back to the James Cameron thing.
Yeah.
In the aspect is like I think a lot of people are waiting for somebody to give them permission to do what they want to do, and that's the thing that I think, especially nowadays, the accessibility is there, and we've talked about this in a few episodes. Where it's just like I tell especially the students.
Yeah.
Directors, actors, tech people. Go crowdfund and rent a space.
Everybody wants to work.
Right.
Everybody. I don't care who it is.
You know, and the great thing about it is even if you borrow money from family, guess what? The one thing that you can do with theater that you can't do in film is maybe break even.
Maybe. I will say, theater's been dying for 1,500 years, and somehow it's still kicking. And I think with the advent of AI, I think it's going to even kick harder. But I will say this.
AI is not going to put actors on stage.
It's exactly. So that's why I think theater is going to make some sort of resurgence. But here's the thing. Things have gotten to a weird point right now where I think it's just as expensive to make a film as it is to make a play. Because it's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's really difficult. And the art form of plays is so important. It is part of culture. Society is only as good as its culture. So we lose that. We start to crumble as a society. And I really mean this. I mean, it's vital, right? It's like, I'm quoting all these people just to help it be digestible to people. But like Ethan Hawke said, it's like poetry doesn't mean much to a guy who's working 9 to 5 and has to feed his family until he loses a loved one, until his heart breaks, until that person goes through some sort of hell. And then poetry does not become a luxury. It becomes a necessity to understand the world, to like heal oneself, to find out that somebody else has gone through this too,
Sure.
And same with plays and things like that. I bring up that thing about plays are very expensive because really, the arts need your support. They really do. And breaking even on a play is still a very difficult thing. We could sell every seat and we'll barely get there. We also need grants. We also need funding. And I just feel like if you're going to be a writer, if you're going to be an actor, if you're going to be an artist of any sort, I think it's also incumbent on you to be an arts advocate because, we're losing it all, and it just shouldn't feel this way. I think we've groomed ourselves in this country that everything costs and must make a profit. But the day that libraries, theater, schools, and hospitals, the day those 4 things needed to turn a profit, we were on our way out.
Yeah.
We were ready for destruction because these are 4 things that should not have to turn a profit. Just like a country we're fooled into thinking a country has to turn a profit. No, it doesn't. A country has to just take care of its people. Yeah. And so when these things have to turn profits, our healthcare goes down. The quality of our art goes down. We're only going to get another Fast and Furious movie, right? The books go down. People start reading less. I mean, it's like, just name it. The second those 4 things, those items I just mentioned, had to turn a profit, we were lost. Education has to turn a profit. Oh no, we're lost.
Well, let me give you the other side of the coin. I think it depends on the scale of what you're working with because, you can get, especially depending on your market, you can get, like when we were producing Noir, that was a $675 a weekend.
Yeah.
I could get a theater for $3,000. I'd pay my lighting guy.
Yep.
All the actors were working for free.
Yeah.
All the directors were the actors that were in other pieces.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Where there's a will, there's a way.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So
high five to that. But at the end of the day, I want the writers to get paid. I want the actors 100%. To get paid. I want everybody to live a good life. And there's no reason not to.
Right.
Because when you spend a little time in these other countries and you go, but their populations are so much smaller. But that doesn't matter. It's still per capita. We make more money than them. We actually do. But we live more contritely because we feel like we can't have things unless we pay through the nose. But in England, you can go see a play if you don't have any money and see the best actors in the world, Well,
I'll say that that's a cultural thing as well. I don't think we have an appreciation of the arts, and that's why we get a lot of Fast and Furiouses, and things like that. And there's not good stories.
Sometimes it's accessibility. You're right, and sometimes it's like, we're in a fast food culture, blah blah blah. But here's the thing, it's like when you live in New York. Let's keep it in America. We won't compare ourselves to other places. Everybody goes to theater in New York.
100%.
When you live in New York, the accountant, the guy who runs the deli, everybody goes to theater. It's not like a special thing. Like you just go, right? But we don't have that culture from ear to ear in the country.
Right.
And I think part of that is like national movements that are really important. Sorry to get really political for just a minute, but you know why everybody in this country says, well, we should go to a national park? because at that time, FDR made it a thing. It's part of being American is to have a national park to go to Yosemite, to go to these places and go, hey, you know what? This is ours. We paid for this. We keep this place, so we get to have that. What if theater had that same ethic? What if writers and writing had that same ethic? What if each town had a poet laureate? Each town. Because it's possible, right? I mean, yeah, things would be different. It's, cultures sometimes are blamed on individuals and all the rest of it. But no, sweeping things that happen like that, it's like, for instance, so why did I did a whole 10 years of just war plays. Why? Well, because the Greeks and the Romans only wrote war plays.
Right.
Why? Well, because they were all citizen soldiers, which means nobody was a soldier who wasn't a citizen and wasn't a citizen who wasn't a soldier, which means the entire population went to war, which also meant all our playwrights were veterans. So how different would our movies and our plays be if every playwright and every screenwriter was a veteran from a war? Well, it would change. I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying,
of course.
But how does that change things? So culture sometimes is world movements. It's maybe somebody having a vision like an FDR that says, this is the way we express ourselves as Americans. Because I got to tell you, not other countries prize hiking the way Americans do. We love taking a picnic out. We love well, how did that happen? Did it just happen on its own? Well, yeah, one could say, well, people like nature. No, it became part of America because we focused on it, right? And I think that can happen in the arts. I think that can happen in writing. I think that can happen in the quality of things, right? If you get coffee at your favorite spot that does like has the best barista in the world, it really is hard to get mini market coffee after that, right? Once you go up in the quality, it's really hard for you to go back. Well, the arts are the same way, writing's the same way, right? You are not gonna, as a kid, we love the choose your own adventure books. I don't think any adult is gonna read one now because they're like, this is lovely and everything, but can I read like a real book? Like if you're a real avid reader, you're not going to go back to that, right? And so I feel like there is a way to develop the taste of a culture, a national kind of movement toward, isn't this cool? Not so that we can all be snooty and have our noses in the air. That is not what I want. Hey man, I'll go to Chili's and get the onion rings. I'm there. Okay, that's not what I'm trying to do. But I would say that if you advocate for the arts, it's like some really cool stuff out there,
100%.
and we're missing it. It's like, and it's ancient. It's just like there. It's like film teachers telling their kids. It's like, you know how many cool films were made 100 years ago, like 80 years ago. They were so cool. Let's like dig it up. They're right there. Frank Capra. Are you kidding me? And I feel for writers, for contemporary works, I think there's just a treasure trove of things out there, and then we change people. I mean, I make these things, James, and I sometimes worry. I'm like, who's sitting at home going, "Oh, good, King Lear"? Like, who's sitting there doing that? So what we do is we try to pack it in the first weekend, word of mouth, and people go, "Hey, I saw this really wild thing," and I think that's really important to our craft as well. Is like going back to conversations, like-minded people talking about things. It changes your life.
Well, this was a great conversation.
Thanks, James. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, I have 3 questions, though, before I wrap it up. So now this one may not apply to you because I know what you're working on right now. Are you working on anything else that you're prepping for? Or is it just like, I got to get this thing off the ground first?
Yes. I'm working on a book series with my wife, and that's connected to the TV series that I'm kind of hammering out right now, and I can't wait to get back to it. So there's that, and just you get a lot of ideas, so they start piling up like trains on a car. Oh, yeah. So you're trying to get to them. So I've got some exciting stuff to get back to as soon as I open this play, which is real close. This week is going to be pretty wild getting this up on its feet.
Imagine so.
But yeah, I'm having a trippy experience with it too. I mean, you try to do a David Lynchian kind of Shakespeare, you end up having a trip. And last night when we did another dress run through, there are moments in that play where even me as the playwright and the director, I'm shaking my head going, this is just bananas. And I'm enjoying it so much. So I hope some people have that same experience when they come see it.
I hope so too. Yeah. Where can people find your work? Obviously, the Odyssey Theater in
West LA. Yeah. Please go to odysseytheater.com. They always do something interesting there. The Odyssey Theater also needs your support because, you can go to CTG or and not to knock them, Mark Taper Forum, all these places, and they see the traveling shows that come in from New York, and it's great. But you have to understand, that's corporate art. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with corporate art. You can have fun, and it's beautiful, and you can watch corporate art. But where the real stuff is happening, and LA doesn't get enough credit for it. We're like breaking ground, man. We're doing cool things. We're not doing plays about, getting a job as a film actor. We're doing like real stuff. And the Odyssey Theater has always been a place for that. There's 3 theaters inside that theater, right? So you could be seeing any one of the 3 plays they have going on, and everybody crowds into the same lobby, and you're elbow to elbow, and you see all these people who are just excited to see what they're seeing, and then everybody lets into their 3 different sections. And all at once, 3 plays, 3 theaters full of people begin to have an experience together. Oh man, come on, that's magical. What are you going to go spend $30-$40 on bowling? Go to a play, man. It's going to be so cool. Nothing against bowling. Go after. But I'm just saying, it's like, it's such a cool spot, the Odyssey Theater. I think it's a place where people should always be checking in to see what's playing there. Things come in that people have passion projects and they just rent the space to do. And then sometimes the Odyssey is putting it together. And whether it's dance, music, plays, there's always something interesting happening at the Odyssey. Great place.
Well, we'll be sure to include that. We will definitely include the ticket link below for your tickets there. And then finally, are you on the socials?
Well, my theater company is on Instagram, Not Man Apart Physical Theater Ensemble. So is New American Theater, Jack's company, and the Odyssey as well. And lots of cool stuff. Please follow those, add them to your follows because cool stuff will pop up and you'll just be like, oh, wow. Oh, and Word Theater, Word, W-O-R-D Theater. Follow them if you can too. There's just such a cornucopia in LA. Right. It's just difficult because it's spread out. Community's hard to find, but these are all really cool little cloisters of writers, actors, directors. They're all doing their thing, and I gotta say, it's like for all the guff that LA gets about the theater part of it, like, oh, that's not really, that's a movie town. There's people doing great stuff all the time here.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, John Farmanesh-Bocca.
You got it.
Thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Been a pleasure. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, until we see each other again, keep writing.